Welcome back to my next segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons as I continue talking about the homecoming that we shot in 1971. Then we get into the wonderful interaction of the turkey arriving and Grandma's suspicion about this turkey and where it came from. And I loved everything, the undercurrents in this scene because Charlie's challenging Grandma, who's challenging him back about how he shot it. He's got an answer for everything. And Olivia is just really walking her own moral tightrope about how to justify for herself being able to accept this turkey, but she doesn't want to know too much about it. She doesn't really want to know where it came from because if she really knows, then she wouldn't be able to accept it. So there is a mother knowing she needs to feed her family, and where we all may have those moments of where's our line in the sand. And I thought that was very interesting to see those moments with Olivia where she sort of let certain things ride. And later on when John Boy brings it up, she's like, that's enough out of you, John Boy, go milk the cow. So she just kind of rides over all of that, and Grandma sort of huffs and puffs, and right away the brilliance of Ellen Corby is on full display. I think my favorite moment with Patricia Neal was when I come back in from milking the cow after talking with John Boy and getting his advice, and ask her if she thinks I'm pretty, and she says no, and I am disappointed, and she says, I think you're beautiful, but that she never even looks at me. It's just all so matter of fact.
Mama, do you think I'm pretty?
No. I think you're beautiful.
I'm in no mood for surprise. Best surprise you can
Thanks, Mama.
You're welcome, Mary Ellen.
There wasn't a lot of extra sentimentality in how these scenes were played, which to me just brought such wonderful realism to it. So I thought the combination of the casting and the direction just all guided us with Earl's beautiful words down just the perfect path. Then, of course, there's the whole scene with the missionary. This was another scene shot in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it was a freezing night. I mean, freezing for us, a lot of children from Southern California who were not really appropriately dressed to deal with that kind of cold. And poor Mary didn't even have like winter boots on. She just had like shoes and socks or sort of tights on. So we were all quite cold. I would say our coats weren't all that warm. We had mittens, we had hats, but we were out there for many, many hours that evening, and it was cold, and we were standing around in the snow, and there wasn't a lot of ways to warm up while we were there. But it sure made for realism when we were shooting. And of course, then there's all those fun exchanges with the Bible verses. And again, you get an opportunity to see that relationship between Mary Ellen and John Boy, and the sort of the one-upsmanship as John Boy tries to one-up Mary Ellen on the Bible verses. And again, the humor in that moment, capped off by that doll that we all decide it's going to be okay to let Elizabeth get this doll. Aaron, of course, is very indignant that this is happening, and we're not entirely sure that Aaron isn't going to go home and tell. Another thing in terms of shooting the scene with the doll and the unwrapping of the doll, it was important that the camera be able to see the doll and the cracks in the doll's face. So there's a point here where they're trying to unwrap it and reveal the face, and the doll starts to slip down, and somebody in there with their hands, holding the doll, makes sure that the doll remains upright, and that as we unwrap it, that the camera can actually identify this broken face, which then of course drops to the snow, and we all head on back home. The scene between John Boy and Olivia, another absolutely stunning scene between Patricia Neal and Richard Thomas. And I found it just heartbreaking because when he finally is talking to his mama and revealing what's going on in his life and his concerns and his dreams and his sense that he already feels like he's going to have to give up on these dreams to become a writer, and that if things had been different and there hadn't been a depression, that maybe he would have been able to do something with his life, and a mother whose heart is breaking to want to give her son his heart's desire and wanting to support him, but not necessarily knowing how, and not fully understanding this child who his dreams and the direction he wants to go is so very different from what she knows or has been around. So again, a scene that was done predominantly in one shot because of the way the actors were placed. They didn't worry all the time about being in front-on close-ups. They allowed the camera to capture it from the side of the two actors and just let the scene play out without chopping it up a lot with extra editing. So that doesn't happen as much anymore, but I love when it does. And perhaps it was still a factor of the time period that we shot the Waltons and the Homecoming in, and that perhaps the crew and the director and everybody having come from an earlier era where that kind of time and attention was given to the way things were shot and how perfect it was for this show at that time. We're just sending John Boy off to go search for his daddy. And of course, he heads off and ends up at Ike's store looking for Charlie because he's been told to go find Charlie, see about borrowing Charlie's truck, having Charlie drive him to go look for his daddy. Well, of course, he arrives at Ike's and there is Charlie in handcuffs because the sheriff has arrested him for those turkeys and hams and things that are in the back of his car. Another case of John Boy making a moral choice because basically Charlie says, if you're okay with taking the truck, then that's fine. So even though the evidence is still there, John Boy decides the most important thing is trying to find his daddy and make sure he's okay. So he's willing to take the chance. So he takes those keys and off he goes in Charlie's truck. And now John Boy's supposed to be 15 at this point, but he's driven a little bit. So there he goes off on those icy, slick, dark roads driving this truck. So good for him. Of course, Charlie's car runs out of gas, and frustrated, John Boy slams the steering wheel, and then he tries to get out of the car, and you see him try to open it from the inside and ultimately reach outside and open it from the outside, which I've talked about in episodes of the Waltons, that people tend to do that. He particularly did that with John Boy's car during the Waltons. He hears singing, and that takes him to Reverend Dooley's church, and he goes in and he shares in the experience that of the service, the Christmas Eve service that Reverend Hawthorne is having with his congregation. Afterwards, Hawthorne suggests that if they are in need of gas, that they go by the Baldwins and hope that perhaps a customer has come by and that they might be able to siphon some gas from one of those vehicles. So off they go to the Baldwins, where my all-time favorite Christmas tree that they are decorating with the live lit candles on this tree. This was just the most amazing tree with all these lit candles. And I remember being on set when they had it all done up and lit, and it was so gorgeous, but I kept thinking, oh my goodness, what a fire hazard. So that was amazing to me. And of course they stop by, they have a little bit of the recipe, and they sing, and Cleavon was quite a singer. He had a beautiful voice. And of course, John Boy doesn't really want to be there. He doesn't really want to be drinking the recipe. But Hawthorne keeps letting him know, no, this is the way we do this. And another one of my favorite moments when they finish singing and they're laughing, and then
someone is singing today. Miss Emily, Miss Mamie, we got to have some gas.
Gas.
They don't have gas, but they do have their papa's sleigh. And so off they go for a horse-drawn sleigh ride in the snow. And during the time that we were actually filming up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I remember getting to go for a sleigh ride in that sleigh. It was the only time I've ever had a chance to do that. It was just magical. It was like going back in time to my favorite Christmas movies from earlier eras when people did go for sleigh rides and the types of things that growing up in Southern California were never an option. We might get to go on a hayride or something like that, but never a sleigh ride. So those were some of the very special memories that I took from that time filming all those years ago. Once they're on the sleigh ride and they run across the block in the road and have to turn around, one of the next things you see is them hearing the jingling of those bells as the Baldwin sisters are going to drop John Boy off back at home. And you see all of us sleeping in the same room, and it looks like maybe a couple of beds, but all piled in there together. Another sequence with beautiful photography as John Boy starts telling the story about the stable, and you see the shot across him and he's in focus in the foreground, and then you see sort of the out of focus children sitting on the stairs behind him. And then when he gets up and goes to the door, that you see him initially in close up and then he closes the door, and that beautiful shot through the door with what looks like, frost on that window that they're shooting through, and just stunning shot choices. Then, of course, Daddy does arrive and we are so excited, and he has a whole bag of presents, and he tells that wonderful story about wrestling with Santa up on the roof and grabbing toys. And I love the expressions on Mary and Cammie, and just they were so real. They were so excited about these presents, and they were going to get to open the presents, and then of course everyone does, and we all get wonderful gifts that we weren't expecting. This was a really big deal at that time during the Depression. These were amazing gifts. And then of course the beautiful moment when John Boy gets those writing tablets and knows that he's going to be supported by his family in his dreams. And there's nothing like that as a child and as a parent to recognize that and do what you can to support your child's dreams. So lovely stuff. Andrew Duggan was lovely to work with. We didn't get to work with him very long because there was just this one sequence. So it was maybe a day or two that we worked with him, but we bonded right away. We never got to work with him again, and I don't think we've ever crossed paths again since, which is, was kind of sad. But we did have those brief times together, which was very special. And of course, it all wraps up with the first time we get to hear those iconic good nights, and what that has meant over the years, and the number of people who have told me that their family did that, or the people that have started to do that because of the Waltons, or the ways in which it has influenced pop culture. I remember hearing a headline one time on one of the space missions where the headline said, "Astronauts say goodnight, Walton style." So the way in which that has become iconic with the Waltons and in people's lives is just so moving to me. And, that's the thing we get asked about. People want to hear us say, good night, and that became part of every single show. So that was very special. We had no idea at the time that we recorded those, what that would mean for the next 50 years of our lives, but there you go, it's still with us. A lot of wonderful things happened during the 5 weeks we were filming. Not only did I get my first opportunity to bond with this amazing cast and family that is still in my life, but we had such fun. We filmed for 4 weeks at the studio. Then they chartered a plane and took us to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. My first time on an airplane. And then we stayed at this fun lodge in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, at the base of the Teton Mountains. Edgar Bergen put on a show with Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer. And that was very special for the children in the lodge that he put on this show. We built snowmen for real, like around at the hotel, at the lodge that we were staying at. We had Halloween there and went trick-or-treating to each other's hotel rooms. And I remember our teacher had brought Halloween treats for us so that we could go trick-or-treating. So by that time we'd been together. We were going into our 5th week of being together, and we were super close by then. So all that was just great fun. And I remember it was during that last week in Wyoming that I started hearing rumors about them considering taking it to series. That's what I have for you for this second part of Behind the Scenes of the Homecoming. I will be back with more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. And I wish you all very happy holidays and good night to all of you. Thanks for watching.